Hello, my name is Marius and today we're talking about the most effective study/note-taking technique, active recall. For that I've laid out 3 chapters. Number 1, what active recall is. Number 2, how to use active recall with Cornell notes. And number 3, how to use active recall with flashcards. Let's get right into it. So what is active recall in the first place? Just quickly summarized, it's a memorization technique as well as a studying and note-taking technique. The motivation behind it is that you make studying more enjoyable, that you can already revise your topics and subject while you're learning it for the first time, and you substitute the time-consuming part of taking lecture notes with a way more efficient note-taking technique. And it works like this. So instead of your traditional note-taking, in which you just rewrite, copy and paste what the lecturer, the professor, talks up front, maybe writes on the blackboard, on a whiteboard, has some slides up, you're going to be asking yourself questions from now on. The thing is that you already are handed out all the information itself. You don't need to have it twice. That means your lecture slides that you can download online, and that means additional literature. That means your lecture itself as a recording. You already have the information. You don't need to copy and paste it, and just writing it down again doesn't serve you anything. You might know that approach from quite common revision technique called flashcards, where you have front page and your back page, and on the front page like a question, and then you need to answer that question, and then you turn it around and be like, yes, I absolutely knew that. Yeah, does that ring a bell? Probably. And active recall is quite similar. You have your text and kind of summarize it with just one simple question. It takes a little bit of practice, but you can do that pretty much with everything, even your personal readings. You then have like a collection of questions that you can use to revise. Hence, you're starting your revision time, not weeks after the lecture, days after the lecture, or right after the lecture, but during the lecture, while you're learning something new. And that is pretty cool. That saves you tons of time. And you kind of practice taking an exam. You put yourself in the mind of a lecturer and ask yourself the question, what could a lecturer ask about this very specific topic? But most often the truth is that you're still not able to fully substitute your lecture notes. That's why there's a technique called Cornell notes. That really helps if you have the fear of missing out on content. Instead of like, again, copy and pasting something, you're doing it a bit more structuredly. So you have your main center of the page in which you take your notes as you used it. That could be notes from the lecture, that could be notes from a textbook, that could be notes from any source of material that you have at hand. On the left side then, you write down your keywords, your study phrases, your diagrams, everything that's like really important at a first glance. And on the bottom, you have a summary for main ideas, questions again, and I recommend you to do the summary after class because in a lecture, time is very limited and you want to just purely focus on the lecture and what your professor's talking about. And I myself have created a template in which I connected active recall and Cornell notes, and I call it the Active Lecture Notes Collection. It's part of a university's starter kit that I created in general, which helps students like you get started with university by having the most efficient science-based study material at hand. And I just quickly want to show you how it looks like. After purchasing it, you will be clicking on download on the deliverable, which will send you to a Google Drive. There you can view your 10 designs that you can choose from and download it here. Once it's downloaded to files, you can import it to GoodNotes, to Notability, to any of your favorite PDF reader and duplicate it as often as you want. I created it that way so that you have one of those notebooks per lecture that you can include your lecture slides as well and can work with it in the lecture. And because, as I said, revision is quite a big topic when it comes to active lecture notes, that's why at the end of this notebook there are flashcards linked to, so that you can right away improve your retention and study with it without having to switch in between multiple apps and can just stay in GoodNotes, for example, or Notability. I mentioned it briefly earlier what flashcards are, but to summarize it more clearly now, you have your front page in which you ask a question where you have a text with blanks, an equation that you would need to explain, and on the back side you have the answer to that question, the full text, not just the filled in blanks, or the explanation to this particular equation that you want to explain. Each and every individual flashcard is meant for one fact alone, so that it doesn't get too crowded. But there are also flashcard apps that you could potentially use, like Anki flashcards, it's quite a popular one. Quizlet as well, where you can create the flashcard itself and use a retrospective revision timetable. So you need to study whenever you cannot remember a certain flashcards after a certain period of time. I might make an extra video about the retrospective revision timetable because it's a really powerful method. But you could also use Google Docs and have it on like all your different devices. There you have one column where you ask the question as you're used to it now, and then the next column is where your answer is stated. The answer of course needs to be in the background color so that you can't just read it, and then you can color it in. You can also categorize it quite well with like different tabs, or based on importance, or based on how well you studied something. That's totally up to you with Google Docs. And I don't want to miss out on the traditional flashcards, which could look like this, fully blank. Maybe they're lined, maybe they're a bit smaller, and so on, where you, as I said, write down a question on the front side and then you have the answer on the opposite side. Simple enough. It can just get very, very, very crowded with those physical flashcards, and you quite easily lose an overview of what you have studied and what you haven't studied yet. So that's why I would always root for the digital one, in particular if you combine it with the active lecture notes template, which you have your lecture notes, Cornell notes, and the flashcards just in one bundle, which is pretty cool. And yeah, in case you are interested in how to take notes efficiently, watch this video up here. And that being said, thank you very much for watching. See you next time.